Hello, welcome to our 4th week. You guys, this is our last week in January, which is so crazy to me. So this week I'm going to do 3 videos, and our whole week is 1 Nephi 16 through 22. So we have 7 chapters, which is kind of a lot, but today's is my favorite for sure. It's a really good one. Today we're going to start in tabletop. I don't know if you guys remember what that is. If you don't, I've got you. So our shoulders are over our wrists, hips over our knees, a nice neutral spine right now, and we're just going to start to breathe in this pose. So inhale and exhale. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to start breathing in a pose other than just sitting down like we usually do or standing up. Sometimes it just lets a little bit more oxygen into our lungs, lets our belly expand a little bit. In this pose specifically, gravity kind of pulls our stomach down to the ground as we breathe, which kind of lets in more oxygen naturally. As you exhale, try to kind of engage that core at the top. Let all the air out and bring it back in on your inhale. First Nephi 16. So if you remember, let's do a refresher a little bit. Last week we were talking about how, Nephi was talking to Laman and Lemuel. They kind of humbled themselves before Nephi, enough for Nephi to explain Lehi's vision to them and what the things mean, and kind of talking about life and where people are, and those who are holding on to the iron rod and those who are not and going either into the river or the great and spacious building. So we're moving on from that whole story, but before we do, it talks about how Laman and Lemuel take the truth a little bit hard. They're like realizing that it's kind of hard to face their weaknesses. In verse 2 it says, "The guilty taketh the truth to be hard, it cutteth them to the very center." And so Laman and Lemuel are kind of realizing that they are not holding on to the iron rod very well, and that's where they have been, and that's where they are. So they kind of take that a little bit hard. Verse 7, it talks about how Nephi, Laman and Lemuel took the daughters of Ishmael to wife, and they got married in the wilderness. And then throughout this chapter of 16, they start having children and starting their families. As you guys are breathing, I hope your breath is kind of warm. Let's start our cat and cows here. So inhale. This is a cow pose. So we're reaching up, gazing up, engaging that core as always. We're not putting strain in our back, but we're reaching up, lifting up, and finding length in that spine as we curl it. And then we're going to go into cat pose by bringing our chin to our chest and exhaling, curling our back. Inhale into cow, exhale into cat. And just do this, kind of welcoming that breath into your movement. So in verse 10, the Lord speaks to Nephi again in the tent. He commanded them that on the morrow they should take their journey into the wilderness some more. So that's all he really knows. And then they wake up and find a ball of curious workmanship on the ground in front of their tent. This is the Liahona. Sorry, I can't talk. And I've studied a little bit about the Liahona, and this is a ball that's not made of magic. It's not man-made. It works on faith. So as we go through this, we'll kind of see that he followed the direction of the ball, which led us to the more fertile parts of the wilderness. That's verse 16. So they're going into the wilderness, and so they come to this spot where they're really hungry and they need food. Verse 18. And Nephi breaks his bow. Okay, and so he comes back let's see, right here, let's bring our toes down to the ground. We're gonna lift our hips high into the sky into downward dog and engage that core. So exhale here, inhale, and on your next exhale, lift your hips high. You can rotate the heels, just bring that movement into your body this morning. It might be early. So Nephi breaks his bow, and he comes back to their tents without food. And Laman and Lemuel begin to murmur exceedingly, and they're really mad that he broke his bow. And then in verse 20 it says, they began to murmur against the Lord. And so I just thought about that. As I read that, I thought about that. And I think so many times we do that, right? Like, things happen. We're all human. We all have free agency. And things are going to happen. How many times, though, do you blame the Lord for things? And yes, they're starving. I'm sure they're just like totally hangry. But how many times do we get mad at God for something that has happened when it's just a natural part of life? A bow is going to break every so often, and that's okay, but they blame God. And they murmured against the Lord. And then, so Laman and Lemuel are totally just murmuring here. Let's move on to cobra or upward dog. So from here, we're just going to come into high plank, shifting your weight back onto your shoulders and arms. You can stay here for a minute. You don't have to. And whenever you're ready, we're just going to kind of go down, tricep push-up, bring or chaturanga dandasana, right? Bring your elbows in towards your body. We're going to lower down, and you can set your whole body on the ground just like this. And then your wrists are going to be under your shoulders, and you're going to just bring that upper body up. If you want to go into upward dog, your hips and knees are just going to come up off the mat, and you're going to go up a little bit further. Upward dog is a little bit more intense. Cobra is less intense, the modification. Okay, so Laman and Lemuel are mad. And they have no food, and their families are a little bit frustrated. And then, so Laman and Lemuel, I just think it's so interesting where these two people are, right? There's Laman and Lemuel who are mad and blaming God at this. And then there's Nephi in verse 22. Let's see, 23. 22, it talks more about how they hardened their hearts, even unto complaining against the Lord. So then verse 23, I, Nephi, did make out of wood a bow from a straight stick and an arrow. Wherefore I did arm myself with a bow and an arrow. It's just so interesting because there's two sides to this, right? And this goes back to what we talked about last week. Laman and Lemuel are murmuring, they're mad, and they're just complaining and blaming God. Nephi, on the other hand, is making a bow. He puts it into action. He's like, okay, well, I can either sit here and complain about it, or I can actually do something about this. Bring your toes underneath your heels and lift up again into downward dog. Exhaling here. And last week, do you guys remember when I talked about how there's a circle, right? You do the action, you get results, and it gives you a lot more belief. And it's this round and round circle. So Nephi, I'm sure to this point he's like, I know that if I just do some action, the Lord will guide me. So he starts making a bow, and then he goes to the Lord and says, okay, Lord, where do you want me to go to get food? He's not complaining. He's not mad. He's just putting into action what broke and fixing it. Okay, so come down into a sitting position. Let's see, I'm going to face you guys. We're going to come down and sit. Our left leg is bent, and the knee is going to come in towards the center of our body. Okay, so we're here. If that's too intense for you, your knee can come out here. No big deal. And then this right knee is going to go right on top. So eventually you want your knees to be right on top, stacked on top of each other. If you want, if that's too intense, you can totally come here. Wherever you are, eventually we kind of want to just bring those knees right on top of each other, and you'll feel that stretch in those legs and the glutes. It's a really good one. And yeah, and just breathe here and stretch those legs for a minute. Okay. Okay, so many things here. First, Laman and Lemuel, like, this whole time they've kind of been, we're humbling ourselves before you, teach us Nephi, and then they're complaining because something happens, right? And how many times do we go back and forth on our faith with the sway of life, right? With like the ebbs and flows that life gives us. How many times does our faith kind of reflect that? Is our faith clear up here the whole time? Or does your faith kind of follow that? That's kind of hard. There you go. Does your faith kind of follow that with what life hands you? And we hope it to be straight, right? I mean, I know mine has definitely gone up and down at times. And because we are human and our mind thinks certain ways and our spirit thinks another way, and that's totally human. So, but when things don't necessarily go the way we expected or the way we planned, how many times does our faith stay clear up here that whole time? I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. And have you ever blamed God? And then this other part of the story, there are two sides to this, right? Laman and Lemuel, murmuring, complaining, not doing anything. Nephi is over here with faith, putting it to action, and then praying. And where do these people end up, and what is the difference there? Okay, inhale up, bring your legs up to center, and just kind of hug them here, counteract that stretch. Okay, and then verse 29, at the end of this, I love that it says, and thus we see by small means the Lord can bring about great things. That's everything. I just paused there for a minute and thought, that is everything. Okay, our right knee is going to go down. We're just going to switch sides, okay? So our right knee is going to go down, center of our body. Our left knee is going to go on top. If they're not totally on top of each other, no big deal. Come to where you are and feel that stretch on the other side. I mean, at first I was like, all the primary answers, scriptures, praying, all these things kind of lead us and guide us, and the Holy Ghost comes and we focus on that and we see that in our life and we see God in our life. And he takes us to places, right? Through those little tiny small things, and we learned so much. Even through like the first 16, 17 chapters of the scriptures, I have already just learned so much through all of this. But then I thought about like motherhood, which is a huge part of my life. And, you know, you're feeding your kids, and it's just such a small little moment in every day, but they're growing and they're gaining so much nourishment from this food, and they grow into these beautiful humans and adults, and you know, every little thing, every drop of the ocean, like everything on this earth is a small mean that the Lord brings about great things. What small things do we do today, like this day and age in your life, to bring about great things in your life specifically? And then, so then they talk about how they pray. Nephi prays with his new bow and arrow, and he finds the Lord guides him to the beasts, and they eat. And then Laman and Lemuel are again kind of going back, up and down, back and forth. So then 17, let's talk about how Nephi builds a ship. And this is an iconic story, right? We've learned about this from our primary days, and I've gotten so much out of it, specifically this time that I read it. Verse 8, and it came to pass that the Lord spoke unto me, saying, thou shalt construct a ship. and you may carry the people across the waters. Because they're going into this wilderness, right? And while we do this, let's just bring our arms up and over our head. Let's bring our right elbow down and just do a tricep stretch. Pull that tricep to the other side. Oh, so they're traveling on this wilderness, and they come upon these waters, the beach, and they're super excited, super happy about coming to water. They're finding water after being in this like desert, barren land. And so then they're like, okay, this must be the promised land. Let's just stay here. And so then the Lord comes and is like, no, you need to cross the waters, and this is how you're going to do it. So, okay, bring that arm down. We're going to switch legs again, bringing that left leg down, right leg on top. This time bring your left arm over and just stretch that left tricep. Verse 13, I will be your light in the wilderness, and I will prepare the way before you. If it so be that ye shall keep my commandments, wherefore, inasmuch as ye shall keep my commandments, ye shall be led towards the promised land, and ye shall know that it is by me that ye are led. And I read that, and it kind of goes back to what we've been talking about again last week, right? I don't think that the Lord is more present for those who keep his commandments, and I don't think that's what he's saying. But I do think that what we focus on grows. And when we focus on the Lord and we bring him into our life, we notice him in our life, and he shows us the way. And then I read that, and then I kept reading, but verse 40 kind of proves that. It says, and he loveth those who will have him be their God. He's just like, you have chosen me, and you know me, and you see me in your life, and I'm right here. I'm right here. Okay, bring your knees up. This time I'm going to switch sides so you can see what I'm doing. But we're here, and we're just going to come into boat pose, right? Because Nephi is building a boat. So there are many ways to do this. There is a supported boat pose where your arms are in back, your fingertips are towards your hips, and you come up like this. Your knees can be bent or your knees can be straight. Okay, this is a little bit harder. This is the easiest supported boat pose. This is a little modification of that, making it a little bit more challenging. Okay, then you can take your arms off and again come up into a bent knee boat pose. Or you can straighten those legs for a little bit harder. So wherever you are, this is middle ground, right? And this is hardest. Wherever you are, just like that. Or find that. And then verse 15, I will exhort my brethren to faithfulness and diligence. I just love that word diligence in there, because a boat is not going to it's not going to be built overnight, right? It's going to be diligent work. And just like all of us, just like our faith and our gospel, it's the diligence that really, really makes the difference between building your testimony and letting it falter. So he builds a boat, and I love, okay, so the Lord is like, you're going to build a boat, go up to the mountain and pray about it, and I'll teach you how. So he goes up to the mountain, he prays about it. My legs, I'm totally feeling, are you guys feeling your legs? In fact, let's just come down and take a breather for a minute. He goes up to the mountain, he prays about it, and the Lord he's like, I don't have any tools. And the Lord's like, well, you're going to make tools. And I watched the Book of Mormon video on this. And when he says this, when he says, I don't have any tools. And then it just cuts the scene for a minute and goes to the picture of ore in the rock that he has looked at before. And then it comes back to him. Like, that's what his mind came up with. What the Lord kind of like, hey, look, you remember this? Okay, let's come back in boat pose. This time I'm going to support, because my legs, I can feel them. You're engaging your core too as well, remember? And if you'd like, you can kind of bring your knees into your body and kind of experiment with coming out and in. Somebody once told me that everything is figure-outable in life. Everything is figure-outable. And I've never forgotten that. Everything is figure-outable. You can figure it out. So I love that Nephi's like, okay, but listen, I don't have tools. And then his mind is like connecting all the dots. Okay, tools, iron, we've seen that before. It's on the rock. You can make tools. And then he's like, okay, but how am I going to shape them? And then God shows him, remember the fire. You've made that before, and just make another fire. And you can mold this iron and ore and make tools, and then you can make a boat. And he shows him with his human mind of what he remembers, and his mind kind of pieces all of this together. Okay, here, let's just bring our legs down. Take a break for a minute. Let's just sway on both of our hips here. And eventually we're going to come onto our back. So whenever you're ready, just come down, roll down onto that spine and come into your back. I'll do it with you. Bring your knees into your chest. And from here, just rock side to side. Massage that lower spine. You can feel all these muscles kind of massage themselves. So then he's making these tools. And Laman and Lemuel come up to him and he's like, hey, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm making tools. And they're like, okay, why are you making tools? And he's like, well, the Lord commanded me to build a boat. And before he even starts moving on to the next thing that he was going to say, Laman and Lemuel are like, we're not helping you, by the way. Okay, roll up. There's no way we're helping you. Spread your legs. And just open those hips. Inhale. And exhale, we're gonna just walk our hands down to the ground. And yes, Nephi has never built a boat, and he's never done that before. So he's just relying on the Lord, and he's trying to tell Laman and Lemuel, and they're murmurers anyway. So they don't want to help, and he's like, that's fine. He starts trying to kind of talk to them through this. Tries to talk to them about like his prayers and what he's seeing, and why are you so hard in your hearts? That's verse 46. And he's like, I fear for you. You have no strength. I have all this power of God in me, and you don't have any, so you don't understand. But God commanded me to build a ship. And verse 50, I said unto them, if God commanded me to do this, I can do them. The first word when I read that came into my mind was callings. I mean, there's so many times when we've got called to something in the church, and it terrifies us, and we think that we're so unfit for the calling, right? And yeah, like, it makes sense in our human mind because we've never done it before. But with God, you can do anything. If he's commanded you or asked you to do this, you can do it. You can do anything. And then while I was reading this, I kept thinking about the Nephi's Courage primary song. And so I typed it in on YouTube, and something popped up for my daughter. I was going to show her the song. I don't think she's ever heard it. So I was going to kind of show her the song and introduce her to the story. And another video popped up called Go and Do by David Archuleta. And so I clicked it and listened to it, and it is amazing. You guys, okay, bring your body over to one side, and we're just going to stretch over to this foot. Bring your arm up for more of a side body stretch, or more bringing your hips down, your chest a little bit down and towards your foot this way. For more, this will get more of kind of a lower back tension area, and this way is more side body. So whatever you're feeling this morning, where do you feel tension? Go there. But this song, Go and Do, by David Archuleta, is definitely worth listening to. I'm going to link the song down in the bio of this video, and so you can listen to it easily. Just click on it. Okay, switch sides. And it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, and it has totally, I've been listening to it nonstop this week. Okay, so then come back up. Then it talks about Laman and Lemuel laughing at him and mocking him for making a ship. And they kind of start walking towards him, and he's like, by the power of the Holy Ghost and God, do not touch me or you will die. And they're like, whoa, okay, we won't touch you. And then, so they separate ways for a minute, and then God tells Nephi, just go stretch out your hand to them, and I'll shake them a little bit. Just so that they can get snapped back into a little bit of belief on me again. And maybe it'll help you build the ship a little bit faster. So he goes over to him, stretches forth his hand. They get shook into the ground, and they are then again like, we believe. Again, kind of back and forth, right? And sorry, my battery totally died, and I had to charge it for just a minute. Anyway, I was just finishing up, but my question that I wanted to leave with you today was, what will God ask you to do to bring you over waters, or to bring you places that you maybe have never been? And what does your faith look like when he does ask? And how many times are we kneeling down and praying through the entire process? Nephi's such a good example of all of that, doing all the little, small, and simple things to make great things come to pass. The light in me honors and loves the light within each one of you. I will see you tomorrow on Tuesday. Namaste.